Sir, step away from that door. Are you trying to force entry?
I'm unlocking my office. I work here.
After hours? That's suspicious. I need to see
It's
ID.
inside, on my desk. That's why I'm opening the door.
Don't reach for anything yet.
So I can't open the door and I can't prove I work here?
I just need cooperation.
You're getting it from the public defense.
Officer Jason Keer had been with the Portland Police Department, PPD, for exactly 3 years. His tenure was marked by a pattern that his supervisors had repeatedly ignored. He generated 11 formal complaints in 36 months, all involving stops where he'd assumed criminality based on appearance rather than evidence. One Thursday evening in downtown Portland, Keer made a decision that would cost the city $2.7 million and permanently end his law enforcement career. A 34-year-old attorney, David Richardson, was attempting to unlock the door to his own law office, Suite 431, on the 4th floor of a downtown building, after realizing he'd forgotten his identification badge inside. No crime, no break-in, no complaint. Just a lawyer working late doing exactly what thousands of professionals do every night in office buildings across America. But Officer Keer saw something else entirely. He saw a black man in business attire standing at an office door after hours, and his bias convinced him that something criminal was happening. That false assumption triggered an unlawful detention, a wrongful arrest, and consequences that would expose an entire department's failure to address racial profiling. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Downtown Portland, Oregon, the Pearl District where tech startups share buildings with law firms and consulting agencies. Modern office towers with glass facades reflecting the city lights. It's the kind of area where professionals work until midnight chasing deadlines, where security guards know the regulars by name, where nobody thinks twice about someone entering an office at 10 at night. It was 22:41 on a Thursday evening in July. The building's hallways were quiet but not empty. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead. The elevator dinged occasionally as other late workers came and went. Normal, safe, ordinary. David Richardson had been a public defender for 9 years, fighting for people the system had already decided were guilty. He'd graduated from Lewis and Clark Law School with honors. He could have taken a corporate position making 3 times his salary, but he'd chosen public service. He'd watched his own uncle get railroaded through the system. That experience had shaped everything. He opened his own practice 2 years earlier, handling criminal defense work, taking cases others wouldn't touch. His office was Suite 431 in a mid-rise building on Northwest 10th Avenue. Small space, but it was his. That evening, he'd been working on a motion to suppress evidence for a client whose Fourth Amendment rights had been violated during a traffic stop. The irony wouldn't be lost on him later. He'd worked until his eyes couldn't focus anymore. Just after 22:30, he packed his laptop, grabbed his suit jacket, and headed for the elevator. He was wearing charcoal gray slacks, a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and black leather shoes. He looked exactly like what he was, a professional finishing a long day. He got to the elevator, pressed the button, and then realized his employee ID badge was still sitting on his desk. He needed it to get into the parking garage. So he turned around, walked back down the hallway to Suite 431, pulled out his keys, inserted the office key into the lock. Completely normal, completely legal, completely innocent. But Officer Jason Keer didn't see it that way. Officer Keer had a habit of wandering into office buildings without cause. In his mind, he was being proactive, preventing crime. His supervisors had praised his initiative. Keer had made 6 arrests for trespassing in his 3 years. Never mind that 4 had been thrown out because the people he detained actually worked in the buildings. That evening, Keer had entered the building on Northwest 10th without any call for service, no alarm, no complaint, no reason. He just walked in and took the elevator to the 4th floor. He stepped out and immediately saw David Richardson standing at the door to Suite 431, key in hand, unlocking his own office. In that moment, Officer Jason Keer's bias took over. He saw a black man in business attire at an office door after hours. In Keer's mind, this was a burglar in disguise, someone trying to break in and steal valuables. Keer didn't consider that the man had a key, was dressed professionally, or might have an innocent explanation. He just acted. You think officers should be allowed to enter private buildings without cause? Drop your answer below. Officer Keer walked quickly down the hallway toward David, his hand moving to his belt, his voice loud and authoritative. "Sir, step away from that door." David turned, surprised. He saw the uniform, the badge, the aggressive posture. He'd been through this before. "Good evening, officer," David said calmly, his hands visible, the key still in the lock. "What can I do for you?" "You trying to force entry?" Keer's tone was accusatory, confrontational. "Force entry? I'm unlocking my office. I work here." "After hours? That's suspicious. I need to see ID." David felt the familiar weight of frustration settling over him. "It's inside on my desk. That's why I'm opening the door. I forgot it when I left a minute ago." Keer's eyes narrowed. Don't reach for anything yet. And there it was. David Richardson, a licensed attorney, standing at his own office door with his own key, was being treated like a suspect because Officer Keer couldn't imagine that a black man might belong there. "So, I can't open the door?" David said, his voice steady but edged with controlled anger. "And I can't prove I work here?" "I just need cooperation," Keer replied, as if that explained everything. David looked directly at the body camera on Keer's chest. "You're getting it," he said quietly, "from the public defender assigned to this building." That statement should have made Keer pause, but it didn't. Because in Keer's mind, criminals claim to be everything, lawyers, doctors. It was a deflection tactic. This is where bias becomes dangerous. Keer had already decided what he was looking at. A black man at an office door after hours was a crime in progress, and no amount of explanation was going to change his mind. "I need you to step away from the door and put your hands where I can see them," Keer said, his hand now resting on his service weapon. David's jaw tightened. He'd spent 9 years in courtrooms arguing about unlawful stops and constitutional rights, and now he's living it. "Officer," David said, keeping his voice controlled, "my name is David Richardson. I'm an attorney. This is my office, Suite 431. My name is on the door. My bar card is inside. I have a key because I own this practice. You're stopping me without probable cause. I'm investigating suspicious activity." "What suspicious activity?" David's voice was louder now, frustration breaking through. "I'm unlocking a door with a key. That's not suspicious. That's normal at this time of night in an office building. Attorneys work late. Look at the door. The sign says David Richardson, attorney at law. That's me." Keer glanced at the small placard, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. "I still need to verify your identity." "Then let me open the door so I can show you my ID," David said, his patience wearing thin. "No." "You're not going inside until I can confirm you have a right to be here." "This is insane," David said, shaking his head. "You're detaining me for entering my own office." "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," Keer ordered. "You're arresting me? I'm detaining you pending verification." Keer reached for his handcuffs. David Richardson, a public defender who'd spent his career fighting against this exact kind of abuse, chose to comply because he knew what happened to black men who didn't. Should attorneys be immune from wrongful stops in their own workplaces? Let me know what you think. David turned slowly, his hands raised. "I'm complying under protest," he said clearly for the body camera. "This is an unlawful detention. I'm an attorney entering my own office. You have no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, and I'm going to file a complaint the moment you release me." Keer pulled David's arms behind his back and snapped the handcuffs on. The indignity burned deeper than the physical discomfort. This is what racial profiling looks like when it's backed by a badge. A door opened down the hallway. Another attorney, Sarah Chen, who worked 2 suites over, stepped out. She'd heard the raised voices. "David," she called out, confused, "what's going on?" David turned his head toward her. "Sarah, I'm being arrested for trying to enter my office." Sarah walked quickly toward them. "Officer, that's David Richardson. He's a public defender. That's his office. He works here every day." Keer barely looked at her. "Ma'am, step back. This is police business." "Police business?" Sarah's voice rose. "He's been in that office for 2 years. I've worked with him on cases. This is ridiculous." "Ma'am, I'm not going to ask again. Step back." Sarah pulled out her phone and started recording. "I'm calling building security and the Bar Association. This is harassment." Keer radioed for backup. "Dispatch, this is Unit 15. I need another unit at 1040 Northwest 10th Avenue, 4th floor. Possible trespassing arrest. Also have an uncooperative witness on scene." Within minutes, a second patrol car arrived. Officer Linda Torres, a 12-year veteran, stepped off the elevator. She'd worked with Keer before, and she'd learned not to trust his judgment. "What's the situation?" Torres asked. Keer gestured toward David. "Caught this individual attempting to break into an office. He claims he works here, but has no ID." Torres looked at David, then at the door, then at the sign that clearly read David Richardson's office. "Keer," she said quietly, "his name is on the door." Could be coincidence, or he could be using a stolen key. Torres walked over to Sarah. "You know this man?" "Yes," Sarah said immediately. "That's David Richardson. He's an attorney. This is his office. Officer Keer is making a huge mistake." Torres turned back to Keer, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Uncuff him, now." "I was investigating suspicious activity." "You are racially profiling a professional in his own building. Uncuff him before this gets worse than it already is." Keer hesitated, but the damage was done. The body camera had recorded everything. The witness was filming. He unlocked the handcuffs. David rubbed his wrists, his jaw clenched, fury radiating from him. Torres stepped forward. "Mr. Richardson, I apologize. This should never have happened. Would you like to file a formal complaint?" David looked at her, then at Keer, then at the camera still recording. "Yes," he said, his voice tight, "I absolutely would, and I'll be filing a lawsuit. This wasn't an investigation. This was racial profiling, pure and simple." Building security arrived moments later. A supervisor named Marcus, who'd worked there for 6 years, recognized David immediately. "David, what the hell is going on? This is David Richardson. He's one of our regular tenants. He's here late almost every night. Everyone knows him." Keer said nothing because there was nothing to say. He'd profiled an attorney in his own building, arrested him without cause, and been proven wrong by multiple witnesses. Torres radioed dispatch. "Cancel that backup, situation resolved, and flag this incident for supervisor review. Why do some officers see professional success in black individuals as suspicious rather than normal? Comment your thoughts." The story reached the Oregon State Bar Association by morning. The outrage was swift and intense. David Richardson's attorneys, colleagues who'd worked alongside him for years, filed a comprehensive civil rights lawsuit within 48 hours. The allegations were devastating. Unlawful stop, false arrest, racial profiling, and failure to train officers on implicit bias. The body camera footage told the entire story. David identifying himself, David explaining he worked there, David pointing to his name on the door, and Keer arresting him anyway. The city's attorneys reviewed the case and arrived at a grim conclusion within a week. This was indefensible. The city settled 8 months later. $2.7 million paid to David Richardson, funded by taxpayers who had to bear the cost of one officer's bias. Officer Jason Keer was terminated 10 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was final and unambiguous. Officer Keer engaged in racial profiling and unlawful arrest. His employment is terminated immediately. Keer's name was entered into the National Decertification Index. He would never work in law enforcement again. The Portland Police Department faced intense scrutiny. How had Keer, with 11 prior complaints involving racial bias, remained on patrol? Internal Affairs found systemic negligence. Supervisors pressured to close cases quickly rather than address underlying problems. The Department of Justice opened a pattern and practice investigation. Reforms were announced within 6 months. Mandatory de-escalation training before any solo patrol assignments. Real-time body camera review for all detentions in commercial buildings. And a dedicated civil rights unit to investigate discrimination complaints. David Richardson became an advocate. He testified before the city council. "I had every advantage," he said. "I'm an attorney. I know my rights. I have resources. I have colleagues who could help me. And I still got handcuffed in my own building for the crime of being black after business hours. What happens to people who don't have those advantages?" He paused, his voice breaking slightly. "I defend people every day who've been stopped, searched, arrested without cause. I fight against this exact abuse. And then I lived it in my own office with my name on the door, because Officer Keer looked at me and couldn't imagine I belonged there." David donated a portion of his settlement to organizations fighting police misconduct and started a legal fund to help people file civil rights complaints. But the anger remained. The knowledge that he'd been violated in his own workspace. Should officers face personal financial liability for racial profiling cases? Let me know in the comments. This wasn't just a bad stop. This was a window into how bias operates when combined with authority and unchecked discretion. Officer Keer didn't see an attorney working late. He saw a black man who must be doing something wrong. His bias was so ingrained that he ignored the name on the door, the key in the lock, the professional attire, the calm explanation. None of it registered because his worldview couldn't accommodate a black professional in that space. This is what systemic racism looks like when it's quiet and procedural. No violence, no slurs, just the assumption that black people don't belong in professional spaces after hours. Just the refusal to believe explanations that would be accepted immediately from white professionals. Just the weaponization of safety concerns to justify profiling. Jason Keer's career is over. That's accountability. The city paid $2.7 million. That's justice, at least financially. But money doesn't undo the trauma. The real question is, what changes now? Do departments finally take the 11 complaints seriously before they become number 12? Do they finally train officers that professional spaces include black professionals? Because if we don't fix the system that put Jason Keer in that hallway, if we don't address the bias that taught him to see a black attorney as a burglar, then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next victim, the next person who has to explain why they belong in their own building. Comment if this should be national law. Any officer who arrests someone at their own workplace, proven by documentation, equals immediate decertification. No appeals, no second chances. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, if you think accountability matters and reform starts with awareness, then hit that subscribe button, because we're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for the professionals who deserve to work late without being treated like criminals. This isn't just about one officer or one attorney. It's about all of us and the system we're willing to accept.